For years, fans of Roy Rogers, famous American singer, actor, television host, and rodeo performer, have had to deal with a nagging mystery that tainted his wholesome image and has made loyal admirers question all they thought they knew about the man. Roy had gone through many tough times, and the full story of his personal life stayed hidden from the public. Now, his daughter has decided it is time to reveal those hidden details about her father's past. But instead of the comforting conclusion many fans waited for, what was revealed shocked most people. Let's take a deep dive into these surprising details. Back in the 1940s, Roy was famous for his music and acting, especially among young girls who saw him as a hero. And people also admired him for being a dedicated father to a large family with 12 children. Roy Rogers, born Leonard Franklin Sly in Cincinnati, Ohio, on the 5th day of November in 1911. His parents, Mattie, whose family name was Womack, and Andrew Andy Sly, lived in a small, crowded building on 2nd Street, where a big baseball stadium would later be built. Roy and his 3 sisters, Kathleen, Mary, and Cleda, completed the small family. However, their dad, Andy, tired of working in the city, joined his brother Will to build a small houseboat using leftover wood. In the summer of the year after Roy was born, the family traveled up the Ohio River toward the town of Portsmouth. They wanted a more settled life and bought land to build a home. Instead of a house, a huge flood made it possible to move their houseboat onto land, so they continued living in it on dry ground. A few years later, the family bought a farm in a place called Duck Run, near a small town called Lucasville, north of Portsmouth. They built a 6-room house there, but the farm did not bring in enough money, so Andy took a job at a shoe factory in Portsmouth. During the week, he lived near the factory and came home on weekends, often bringing gifts. One special gift was a horse that helped Roy learn how to ride. Life on the farm was simple. With no radio, the family made their own fun. On Saturday nights, they invited neighbors over for square dances. Roy would sing, play the mandolin, and call out the dance moves. He also learned how to yodel and used it to communicate with his mother across the fields. Roy went to high school in a town called McDermott. After 2 years, the family moved back to Cincinnati, where Andy got another shoe factory job. Roy left school to help support the family by working with his father. He tried going to night classes, but after being teased for falling asleep in class, he gave up school for good. By the end of the 1920s, Roy's older sister Mary and her husband had moved to Lawndale, California. Roy and his father quit their jobs, packed up their old car, and drove the family out west to visit. They stayed in California for 4 months before returning to Ohio. Not long after, Roy got another chance to go back to California with Mary's father-in-law. The rest of the family followed in the spring of the next year. They rented a small home near Mary, and Roy and his father found work driving gravel trucks for a road-building company. In the spring that followed, the company went out of business, so Roy moved to Tulare, California, where he found work picking peaches for a food company called Del Monte. He lived in their workers' camp during these hard times of the Great Depression. Still, Roy began his music journey after moving to California. When he returned to Lawndale as a young man, his sister Mary encouraged him to try out for a radio show called The Midnight Frolic, which was broadcast from a nearby town called Inglewood. A few nights later, wearing a Western-style shirt that Mary had made for him, Roy pushed past his shyness and performed on the show. He played the guitar, sang, and yodeled. A few days after his performance, a local country music group called the Rocky Mountaineers invited him to join them. Roy accepted their offer and became a member of the group during the late summer of that same year. In the spring of the early 1930s, Roy, along with 2 other singers named Spencer and Slumber Nichols, left the group called the Rocky Mountaineers to start their own trio. But the trio did not last long. For the rest of that year, he and Spencer tried several other short-term music groups, including ones called the International Cowboys and the O Cowboys. When Spencer decided to take a break from music, Roy joined a group called Jack Lefevre and his Texas Outlaws. That group was already popular and performed on a radio station in Los Angeles. In the early part of the next year, Roy, Spencer, and another singer named Bob Nolan formed a new group called the Pioneers Trio. Roy played guitar, Nolan played the string bass, and Spencer was the lead singer. They practiced for many weeks to improve their harmonies. During this time, Roy kept performing with other radio singing groups, while Spencer and Nolan also started writing songs for their new trio. In the early part of the following year, a fiddle player named Hugh Farr joined the group. He brought a deep bass voice that added to their sound. Later that same year, a radio announcer suggested they change their name because he thought they were too young to be called Pioneers. The group accepted the new name, the Sons of the Pioneers. By then, they were no longer just a trio. By the summer of that same year, the Sons of the Pioneers became popular beyond the Los Angeles area. Their music was played on short radio shows that were broadcast across the country. The group signed a recording deal with a new company called Decca and made their first professional recording in early August. One of the first songs they recorded was Tumbling Tumbleweeds, written by Bob Nolan. Over the next 2 years, the group recorded more than 30 songs for Decca, including the well-known tune Cool Water. His journey into country music began simply by trading a bushel of food for a guitar. With his strong love for music, he helped create the Sons of the Pioneers, who became known for their famous song, Tumbling Tumbleweeds. This success led to small roles in films. The turning point in his career came when he heard that a movie company called Republic Pictures was looking for a new singing cowboy. Their top star at the time, Gene Autry, was having problems with his contract. Roy tried to audition, but a guard at the studio turned him away. Not giving up, Roy cleverly entered the studio with a group of Western extras. Inside, a producer who knew him from the Sons of the Pioneers spotted him and asked him to play his guitar. That moment changed everything. He was given a chance to audition, which led to the start of his movie career. Roy realized he needed a stronger and more heroic name. He had used names like Roy Sly and Dick Weston in earlier roles, but for this new chapter, he chose Roy Rogers. The last name was a tribute to one of his heroes, humorist Will Rogers. The first name Roy was chosen because it sounded strong and noble, like the French word for king. His rise to fame took a big step forward when he replaced Gene Autry in a film released in the late 1930s. The movie was a success, and his performance won over both critics and audiences, launching him into stardom as a beloved cowboy hero. Roy had no idea that this would be the start of an amazing career that would make him the top Western movie star for 12 years in a row, from the early 1940s to the mid-1950s. One of the most important parts of his image on screen was his beautiful golden horse, Trigger. Their bond was more than just for the movies. They were truly always together. Trigger became famous too, with his name often listed next to Roy's on movie posters. He was even called the smartest horse in the movies. Their strong connection and Trigger's clever tricks helped make Roy's movies very popular. During this time, Roy became so well known that he matched the success of Walt Disney when it came to selling toys and products. His fame reached far beyond movies, turning him into a true cultural icon. In an interview during the early 1990s, Roy looked back and said, "I feel like I was a kind of babysitter for mothers in those days. They could drop their kids off and come back around 5 in the evening, and the kids would be happy and full of candy and popcorn." This shows how his clean, family-friendly entertainment made him a trusted figure for parents and a beloved hero for children. Roy's personal life was filled with both happiness and sorrow. His journey as a father and his second chance at love were important parts of his story. He and his first wife, Arlene, loved children but had trouble starting a family. In the early 1940s, they decided to adopt, opening a new chapter in their lives. A few years later, Arlene gave birth to their daughter Linda, and then to a son named Roy Jr., who was lovingly called Dusty. Sadly, just days after their son was born, Arlene passed away. Roy was left heartbroken and alone with 3 small children. During this painful time, he found comfort in his longtime co-star, Dale Evans. Their friendship turned into love. In a touching moment, Roy proposed to Dale at a rodeo while riding his horse Trigger. Dale joined him in the spotlight and said yes. Roy, known as the King of the Cowboys, and Dale, known as the Queen of the West, began a new life together. This new marriage gave Roy a fresh start. In the early 1950s, he and Dale had a daughter named Robin, but soon after her birth, they learned that Robin had Down syndrome. At that time, many people believed that children with this condition should be sent to live in special institutions, but Roy and Dale strongly disagreed. In fact, Roy said firmly, "No, we are going home." They brought Robin home and loved her deeply, no matter what others thought. Robin brought peace and joy to their lives, even though caring for her came with challenges. Tragically, she passed away shortly after her 2nd birthday due to a serious illness caused by the mumps. Roy said she looked like a sleeping angel, showing how deeply they loved her. After Robin's death, Dale wrote a book called Angel Unaware. The book told Robin's story and spoke about the love and lessons she gave their family. The book helped people see children with disabilities in a new way. Because Roy and Dale shared their story so openly, they helped others better understand and accept children with developmental differences. In the fall of the early 1950s, Roy and Dale visited Cincinnati. They performed at the Cincinnati Gardens and appeared on Ruth Lyons' television show called The 50 Club on the station WLWT. Roy's famous horse, Trigger, wore special soft shoes so he could walk down the steps at Crosley Square in downtown Cincinnati. Trigger even rode the elevator to get to the studio where the show was filmed. During this visit, mother and son, the two had once been distant because of personal and religious differences, but they had made peace shortly before Roy passed away. Roy was grateful for their reunion and happy that they had found each other again. The news of Roy's passing touched the hearts of millions around the world. Fans who had grown up watching his movies and television shows remembered him as a true hero. He was not only a legend in entertainment, but also a man known for his kindness, generosity, and humility. His charitable work, especially for children, made a lasting difference. Roy's funeral was held at Sunset Hills Memorial Park in Apple Valley. Hundreds of people came to say goodbye, including many well-known celebrities. His wife Dale, who had been married to Roy for over 5 decades, gave a touching tribute. She said, "Heaven rejoices today because another saint has come home." The farewell ceremony included a special moment when Dale and their children sang "Happy Trails," the beloved song that Roy and Dale had made famous. It was a heartfelt goodbye to the cowboy so many had loved. The media and fellow stars honored Roy's memory with deep respect. Many spoke about how he had lived a life full of compassion and strong values. He was remembered not just as a star, but as a truly good person. Even public figures, such as President Clinton, shared their thoughts about Roy's lasting impact on American culture. Although Roy is no longer here, his children and grandchildren continue to remind the world of him through their love and spirit. Recently, Roy Rogers' granddaughter, Julie Rogers, spoke out to clear up some rumors about her grandfather. She shared what he went through when Hollywood executives tried to change his image. They wanted to make him look more like the famous Western actor Clark Gable. According to Julie, the studio bosses wanted Roy to have eyes like Clark Gable's. They tried to change how Roy looked to match that style. But Julie said this was impossible. She explained they were going for Clark Gable's eyes, but Grandpa was never going to have Clark Gable's eyes. As the executives saw how hard it was to change Roy and how fans loved him just the way he was, they gave up on their plans. Julie added that the changes didn't go unnoticed. Roy's eyes looked different, and fans started asking, "What's going on?" Because of this reaction, the studio reversed the changes. Julie also shared some funny stories about how the movie bosses tried to reshape her grandfather. They thought Roy didn't have enough muscles and told him to do 100 handstands a day and to walk on his hands. Roy actually did it. He even walked from one movie set to another on his hands. But all this effort didn't really impress fans, and the changes didn't stick. The studio, Republic Pictures, also wanted Roy to be more active in Hollywood's social life. They wanted him to go to fancy parties and events. But this was hard for Roy because he was very shy and not used to all the glitz and glamour. Julie said he was painfully shy. He didn't know what to say. To deal with his discomfort, Roy asked if he could bring a friend to the parties. The studio said yes, hoping he'd use the chance to meet other celebrities. But instead of bringing a Hollywood friend, Roy brought his hunting buddy. The two of them sat on the couch all night talking about coon hunting. This funny and unexpected choice showed how down-to-earth Roy really was. It also made it clear to the studio that the Hollywood party scene just didn't suit the King of the Cowboys. The King of the Cowboys lived a life that was far more complex than the image often shown on screen. His life, from a very humble beginning to a Hollywood icon, was marked by loss and resilience. Roy Rogers lived his life the way he wanted, and this is why his legacy remains very strong. Roy and Dale shared happy news with the audience. They were in the process of adopting another little girl. Her name was Mary Little Doe, and they lovingly called her Dodie. She had some Choctaw heritage. Roy jokingly said he was part Choctaw too, explaining that he was 1/64th Choctaw. While in Cincinnati, Roy and Dale also visited with children from a home for disabled kids in Covington. When a few of the children got the chance to meet Roy backstage, one young boy stood out. He was 6 years old and had suffered from abuse and neglect. When he saw Roy dressed in full cowboy clothes, the boy cheerfully called out, "Howdy, partner." Roy saw the sadness behind the boy's smile and noticed the pain in his eyes. Deeply moved, Roy and Dale decided to adopt him. They named him John David and lovingly called him Sandy. Not long after that, the Rogers family adopted a young girl named Marion from Scotland. She was 13 years old when she joined the family and later became known as Mimi Swift. Dale and Roy's son, Dusty, once said that Mimi had a strong impact on his life and on the whole family. Mimi had a powerful and moving life story. She was born in Scotland during World War II, in a shelter during an air raid. She spent her early childhood in an orphanage. Her life changed forever when she sang for Roy and Dale during their visit to the children's home in Scotland in the mid-1950s. They were so impressed with her voice and her joyful spirit that they welcomed her into their family. In the year 1955, Roy and Dale welcomed another child into their growing family. They adopted a little girl, about 3 years old, who was an orphan from the Korean War. They lovingly named her Debbie Lee. Her arrival brought joy and a sense of new beginnings to the Rogers family. Sadly, tragedy struck on August 17, 1964, just a few days after Debbie's 12th birthday. While on a church bus trip to deliver food and clothes to an orphanage in Tijuana, Mexico, a tire blew out. The bus crashed, and Debbie was one of the children who died in the accident. It was a heartbreaking loss for the family. More sorrow came in the year 1965 when their adopted son, Sandy, who was about 18 years old, passed away. Roy and Dale had adopted Sandy after meeting him backstage in Cincinnati. At the time of his death, Sandy was serving in the army in Germany. Sadly, he struggled with heavy drinking, which led to his early death. Despite these painful losses, Roy stayed strong and hopeful. In an interview from the year 1992, he told a reporter that both good and bad times are part of life. He said, "If you don't have tough times, it's hard to appreciate the good ones. Life is what you make of it. You can choose misery, or you can help create happiness." Later in his career, Roy faced serious money problems that affected his fame and financial standing. One big problem came when he lost his deal with Republic Pictures because of a business conflict. He tried to take bold new steps in his career, but they did not go well. He also faced strong competition from other popular Western stars. These challenges forced him to sell valuable items and properties to cover taxes, legal issues, and poor investments. Even though he tried new kinds of movies and television shows, he was never able to fully return to his former success. Through all of this, Roy never lost his faith or his love for his family. He was a devoted Christian and often found comfort in prayer and reading the Bible with his wife, Dale. They shared a strong spiritual bond and supported many Christian causes. Roy once said, "I'm a religious person because I'm thankful for all that God has given me." Even during hard financial times, Roy considered his family his greatest treasure. He deeply loved all his children, both biological and adopted. He made sure to spend time with them, telling stories, singing songs, and going horseback riding. He passed on values like honesty, kindness, and courage to the younger generation. In a touching statement, Roy once said, "My family is my life." In July of 1988, he returned to Cincinnati for a special event called the Greater Cincinnati Homecoming, part of the city's bicentennial celebrations. It was a heartfelt return to a place where he had many special memories. Sadly, in the month of July in the town of Victorville, California, Roy passed away. He died from heart failure at his ranch in Apple Valley, which is near Victorville. He was surrounded by his beloved wife, Dale Evans, during his final moments. At the time of his passing, he was in his mid-80s. In the days before his death, Roy had become weak from illness. He spent much of his time resting and praying. Even though his body was failing, he still showed love to his family and friends through warm smiles and gentle hand squeezes. Most importantly, Roy found peace within himself as he neared the end of his extraordinary life. Roy's final words were soft and meaningful. He said to his son, Dusty Rogers, "I never expected to see you in heaven." These words showed the deep healing that had taken place between father